A man who believes he controls the world is about to learn his world is owned by the one person he disrespects. Julian Vance, a titan of finance, decides to take his ambitious mistress, Chloe, on a lavish yacht vacation. He whisks her away to Serafina Key, the most exclusive unopened private island resort in the Caribbean. He plans to impress her, indulge his ego, and finalize his plan to leave his quiet, pregnant wife. But the paradise he's chosen holds a secret. The island's mysterious owner is waiting, and she's about to turn his tropical getaway into a public execution of his entire life. Julian Vance loved the reflection he saw in the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse. He saw a man who had earned his view, a sharp, 40-year-old predator of the financial markets, clad in a Tom Ford suit with a Patek Philippe on his wrist that was worth more than most houses. His firm, Vance Capital Partners, had just closed a brutal quarter, and he had personally gutted 2 rival funds. He deserved a reward. His gaze drifted to the woman sitting quietly on a cream-colored sofa, her hands resting on the gentle swell of her 6-month pregnancy. Elena, his wife. She was, he had to admit, beautiful in a classical, forgettable way. Old money, the Sandoval family. But their influence had seemed to fade, reduced to quiet philanthropy and academic endowments. He'd met her at a charity gala, been charmed by her serene difference, and married her. He'd seen her as the perfect accessory, graceful, quiet, and from a good family that required no maintenance. Now, her pregnancy had made her domestic, tired. She was always talking about nurseries, or her doctor's appointments, or the charity luncheon she was organizing. It was, in a word, boring. "The jet is filed for a 7 a.m. departure tomorrow," he announced, adjusting his cuffs. "The board meeting in Zurich is non-negotiable." Elena looked up, her dark eyes clear. "Of course, Julian. Will it be long?" Dr. Matthews wanted to discuss the 3rd trimester schedule. "A week, maybe 10 days." He waved a dismissive hand. "It's a complex merger. You know how it is." She did not know how it was. He never explained. He just expected her to nod, which she did. "Please be safe then. I'll have your travel bag sent down to the driver." "Thank you, darling." He kissed the top of her head, the gesture automatic and cold. The board meeting in Zurich was, in fact, a 24-year-old junior analyst named Chloe Decker. Chloe was the antithesis of Eleanor. She was all sharp angles, bright lipstick, and a raw, relentless ambition that Julian found intoxicating. She didn't want to talk about nurseries. She wanted to talk about IPOs, hostile takeovers, and which restaurant had the longest wait list. His real plan was far from a stuffy Swiss boardroom. His new yacht, the Orion, a sleek 150-foot vessel, was currently waiting for him in the Bahamas. Chloe was already there, having flown commercial, a detail he'd insisted on for discretion. From there, they would sail to the most talked-about, most secretive destination in the high-net-worth world. Serafina Key. It was a brand-new, hyper-exclusive private island resort that hadn't even officially opened. Rumor was it cost $1 billion to build. An eco-luxury paradise where the villas were 3D printed from sustainable materials, and the privacy was absolute. Getting a reservation was impossible. But Julian Vance knew people. A few calls, a wire transfer to a discreet holding company, and he had secured the Royal Triton Villa for 10 days, starting the day after tomorrow. He was going to give Chloe the vacation of a lifetime. He was going to indulge in every way he felt he'd been denied. He pictured the turquoise water, the white sand, Chloe laughing as they drank Krug champagne on the deck. "Julian?" Elena's voice was soft, pulling him from his reverie. "Yes." I transferred the quarterly allowance to the Children's Foundation account. The one you asked me to oversee. Good. Good. He had set up that foundation for her as a project to keep her busy. It was his tax write-off. He found it quaint that she took it so seriously, tracking every dollar. See? You're a natural at it. I just want to make sure everything is in order, she said, rising slowly from the sofa. She placed a hand on his arm. Just be careful in Zurich. It's cold there. I'll be fine, Elena. I always am. He watched her walk toward the master bedroom, her gait already heavy with their child. A pang of something, not guilt, but perhaps inconvenience, pricked at him. The timing of the pregnancy was messy. He'd already been seeing Chloe for 3 months when Eleanor tearfully announced the miracle. He had been planning his exit. The pregnancy had delayed it, but it wouldn't stop it. He pulled out his phone, a secure, encrypted device. J. Wheels up at 0700. Handle the jet. The reply from his executive assistant was immediate. EA. Confirmed. Gulfstream is fueled. Flight plan filed for Zurich. He smiled. He then opened a different app. J. Zurich tomorrow. The bird flies south. See you soon. The reply from Chloe was almost instant. A selfie of her in a bikini on a sun lounger, a mischievous pout on her lips. See. Hurry up, boss. Paradise is waiting. Julian Vance turned back to the window, the New York skyline glittering like a carpet of diamonds at his feet. He had it all. The wife, the mistress, the empire, the escape. He was untouchable. The Gulfstream GI-50 cut through the dawn sky, banking southeast, not northeast, toward Europe. Julian's pilots were professionals. They valued the 8-figure bonuses he paid them for their skill and, more importantly, their silence. The flight plan logged in the public FAA database read ZRH, Zurich. The internal navigation, however, was locked on the private airfield in Nassau. Julian slept for most of the flight, waking only to a glass of whiskey and a final review of his actual business, the messages from Chloe. She was getting impatient. She was also getting bold. City. Julian, this resort better be worth it. The concierge at the hotel here is terrible. He didn't even know my name. J. Patience, Chloe. Where we're going, the staff will know your blood type if you ask them to. It's called Serafina Key. You can't even find it on Google Maps. C. Oh, mysterious. I like it. Does your wife even know what Google Maps is? J. Be nice. Elena is traditional. C. She's a relic, Julian. You're a predator. Predators don't stay with house cats. He smirked. Chloe understood him. She saw his power. She wasn't content to arrange flowers. She wanted to help him burn down forests. He remembered briefly how he'd met Elena. It was at a dusty university fundraiser for the Sandoval wing of the library. She was there representing her family. He'd been dragged along by a client. She was wearing a simple navy dress, no jewelry, and was discussing medieval literature with a doddering professor. He'd seen her as a project, a beautiful, untouched piece of classic art to be acquired and displayed. Her family, the Sandovals, were quiet. Her father, a man named Carlos, had been a widower, a soft-spoken man who seemed more interested in his rose garden than the stock market. When Julian had asked to marry Elena, Carlos had only one condition. You must always respect her intelligence, Mr. Vance. It is her greatest asset. Julian had agreed, of course, all while thinking that her intelligence was a charming, bookish quality with no real-world application. He'd managed her trust fund, a respectable but, to him, unimpressive 8-figure inheritance, folding it into his own accounts where he could make it work for her. She had never once questioned his reports. The jet touched down in Nassau. A black Escalade was waiting on the tarmac. 20 minutes later, he was at the marina. stepping onto the gleaming white deck of the Orion. "Julian!" Chloe launched herself at him. She was all perfume, sun-kissed skin, and energy. She felt, to him, like life. "Hello, darling," he murmured, kissing her deeply. "Did you miss me?" "I miss the man who's taking me to a secret island. Let's go. I want to be offshore before anyone else wakes up." Within the hour, they were cruising on impossibly blue water. The yacht's crew was a skeleton staff he'd used before. They served brunch, lobster, caviar, and endless Krug, as Chloe live-streamed her champagne glass to her thousands of followers, carefully avoiding any shot of Julian or the yacht's identifying markers. "This is it, Julian," she said, stretching out on a sun pad. "This is where we should be, all the time. Not hiding, not with you flying back to her. It's complicated, Chloe. The pregnancy." She sat up, her eyes narrowing. "The pregnancy is a problem, Julian, but it's not a solution for her. What's the plan? You can't be a part-time husband and a part-time, well, this." "The plan," he said, sipping his own champagne, "is to enjoy the next 10 days. When I get back, I'm meeting with my lawyers. The prenup is ironclad." She signed it without even reading it. "You're sure?" "Positive. It was a standard agreement. What's mine is mine. What's hers is hers. She gets a stipend, the apartment. She'll be comfortable. She won't fight. It's not in her nature." Chloe smiled, leaning in. "And what about the baby?" "The baby will be a Vance. It will be taken care of. But my life will be with you." He said it and found, to his surprise, that he meant it. Elena was the past. Chloe was the future. Meanwhile, in the New York penthouse, Elena Vance was not arranging flowers. She was in a steel and glass home office that Julian never entered, assuming it was where she balanced her checkbook. She was on a secure video conference with 4 individuals. "The liquidity reports from Vance Capital are confirmed, Mrs. Vance," said a man in London. "He's leveraged 90% of the firm's assets against the A-class shares." "My shares," Elena said quietly. "Yes. The derivative bet he made in Q2 has collapsed. He's been using your holdings, the ones he manages, as collateral to cover the loss. He's been cooking the books, filing fraudulent reports to your personal account. He is, to be blunt, bankrupt. You are the only thing keeping his company afloat." Elena stared at the screen, her face impassive. "And the yacht? The Orion?" "Purchased via a shell corporation," a woman from a forensics accounting firm replied. "Funded by a loan from a bank in the Caymans, with his personal jet, also funded by assets from your trust as collateral." Elena nodded. "Mr. Harrison, is Serafina Key ready?" A silver-haired man on the call, dialed in from a location showing only palm trees, smiled. "We are fully staffed and operational, Madame Sandoval. Your instructions were precise. The Royal Triton Villa is prepared. All island accounts have been flagged." "Good," Elena said. She looked down at the file on her desk. It was a surveillance report. It contained crystal-clear, long-lens photos of Julian and Chloe Decker boarding the Orion in Nassau 2 hours ago. "My father always said," Elena spoke, her voice calm and clear, "that you should always let a man build his own cage. Julian is very proud of his. I think it's time to show him the lock." She looked at the screen. "He's on schedule. He should be arriving at the atoll in approximately 36 hours. I will be there in 24. "And the other party?" Mr. Harrison asked. "Miss Decker." "She is a guest," Elena said, a flicker of ice in her voice. "She will be treated with all professional courtesy." "Until she is not." She ended the call. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the same view Julian had admired. She placed a hand on her stomach. "Your father," she whispered, "is about to get an education, little one." From a very traditional woman. The Orion dropped anchor 2 miles off the coast of an island that looked like a digital rendering. Serafina Key was a perfect crescent of white sand surrounding a lush green interior, dominated by a single, jungle-covered volcanic peak. There was no harbour. A sleek white motor launch flying the resort's discreet flag, a stylized S, pulled alongside. A man in a crisp white uniform bowed. "Mr. Vance, welcome to Serafina Key. We will handle your luggage. The launch is ready to take you ashore." "This is insane," Chloe breathed, her phone already out. "Julian, it's perfect." Julian felt a swell of pride. He had done this. He had secured this. "Only the best, Chloe." The launch ride was silent, cutting through water so clear it looked like blue glass. As they approached the shore, Julian saw that there was no dock. The launch glided directly into a hidden channel cut into the limestone, disappearing under a canopy of mangroves and arriving in a subterranean grotto that looked like something from a spy film. They were met by the resort's general manager. He was a tall, impeccably dressed man in his 50s, with silver hair and an air of absolute, unflappable authority. "Mr. Vance, Miss Decker, a pleasure. My name is Harrison. I am the general manager of Serafina Key. Welcome to paradise." Harrison. "Good to meet you," Julian said, offering a hand. Harrison shook it firmly. "The place is impressive. I'm keen to meet the owner. I might have a business proposition." Harrison smiled, a polite, thin-lipped expression. "The owner values privacy above all else, Mr. Vance. But I will certainly pass along your request. For now your villa is ready. If you'll follow me." They were transported in a silent, electric cart along pathways that wove through the jungle. There were no other guests visible. "Is the resort empty?" Chloe asked. "We are in our pre-launch phase, miss," Harrison replied. "We are operating at 10% capacity, by invitation only, to ensure our service is flawless for our grand opening." They arrived at the Royal Triton Villa. It was less a building and more a compound. A private infinity pool blurred into the horizon. The walls were open to the sea breeze. The furniture was minimalist, expensive, and bespoke. A bottle of 1996 Dom Perignon was chilling in an ice bucket. "This," Julian said, walking onto the terrace, "is what I'm talking about." For 2 days, it was exactly what he had imagined. They swam, they sunbathed, they ate exquisite food delivered by near-invisible staff. Chloe was ecstatic, documenting every second. Julian was relaxed, his phone turned off, his mind blessedly free of Eleanor and New York. On the 3rd day, Julian decided to use the spa. He and Chloe booked a couple's geothermal treatment. After the massage, as they sipped cucumber-infused water, a young attendant approached with a tablet. "That will be $900, Mr. Vance." Julian laughed. "Just put it on the villa's account." "I'm sorry, sir," the attendant said, her smile unwavering. "All auxiliary services must be settled at the time of use. It is a resort policy." Julian was annoyed. "Fine." He produced his American Express Centurion card. The black titanium card was his badge of honor. The attendant swiped it. Her smile faltered. She swiped it again. "Is there a problem?" Julian asked, his voice sharp. I apologize, sir. The card has been declined." Julian's blood ran cold. "What? That's impossible. Run it again." "I have, sir. 3 times." "It's your machine," Julian snapped, his voice rising. Chloe was watching, her brow furrowed. "That card has no limit. Get your manager." "That won't be necessary, sir." Mr. Harrison appeared, as if summoned from the ether. "There seems to be a network-wide outage with the island's credit processing. 1,000 apologies. It's a temporary issue with the submarine cable. Please, the treatment is on the house for your trouble." Julian, though publicly mollified, was deeply unsettled. A network outage didn't decline a card, it produced an error. Declined meant a lack of funds, or a freeze. He stormed back to the villa, Chloe trailing behind him. "Julian, what was that? It was so embarrassing." "It's nothing. A technical glitch," he barked, grabbing his satellite phone from his bag. He needed to call his bank. Now. He powered it on. The phone searched for a signal, and searched. No satellite connection. "What the hell?" He tried again. Nothing. "The Wi-Fi," he yelled, grabbing his laptop. He opened it. The resort's network, Serafina Guest, was visible. He connected. Full bars. He tried to open his banking portal. "This site cannot be reached." He tried to open Google. "This site cannot be reached." He tried to open the Vance Capital homepage. "This site cannot be reached." The only site that would load was the resort's internal homepage, showing the restaurant menus and spa services. "Julian, you're scaring me," Chloe said. "He's blocking us," Julian whispered, a dreadful paranoia setting in. "Harrison, he's blocking the internet." He strode to the villa's phone and dialed 0 for the front desk. Harrison answered on the first ring. "Mr. Harrison, my internet is down. My sat phone is down. What is going on?" "Ah, Mr. Vance." Harrison's voice was impossibly calm. "I was just about to call you. The network outage is more significant than we thought. It seems to be affecting all communications." "That's unacceptable," Julian roared. "I am running a multi-billion-dollar firm. I need to be in contact." "I understand your frustration, sir. We are working on it. In the meantime, might I offer a consolation? The owner of Serafina Key has just arrived on the island. You mentioned you wished to meet. She has graciously invited you and Miss Decker to join her for dinner this evening. Aperture Restaurant, 8 o'clock. Julian paused. The anger was replaced by a surge of adrenaline. The owner. This was his chance. He could fix this. A man this powerful could sort out the communications, or more likely, this was a power play, a negotiating tactic. "Fine," Julian said, his voice cold. "We will be there." He hung up. "What is it?" Chloe asked. "We're meeting the owner," Julian said, a predatory gleam returning to his eye. "The mysterious owner of this island. Get dressed. Wear the red dress, the one I like." He was going to get to the bottom of this. He would turn this outage to his advantage. He'd offer to invest, to help them fix their infrastructure. He would turn this inconvenience into a deal. He was Julian Vance. This is what he did. He turned problems into profit. The tension of the afternoon bled into the evening. Julian, unable to contact the outside world, felt like an animal in a cage. A very beautiful, very expensive cage. He paced the villa, consumed by the decline. It was a message. He was certain the owner was testing him, flexing. "How do I look?" Chloe emerged from the bedroom. She was a vision in the red, backless dress. It was a statement. She was here to be seen, to conquer. "Perfect," Julian said, his mind only half on her. He straightened his own linen jacket. "Let's go. Don't speak unless I speak to you. Let me handle this." Chloe's face tightened. "Don't treat me like an idiot, Julian. I know how to network." "This isn't networking, Chloe. This is a high-stakes negotiation. Just follow my lead." A private cart arrived at their villa at 7:55 p.m. Precisely. The driver was silent. The short ride to Aperture Restaurant was thick with Julian's nervous energy. The restaurant was built on the island's highest cliff, an open-air marvel of architecture that seemed to hang over the ocean. They were the only patrons. Mr. Harrison was waiting at the entrance. "Mr. Vance, Miss Decker, so glad you could join us. The owner is waiting for you on the private terrace." He led them through the empty restaurant, the sound of the waves crashing far below the only noise. They passed through a beaded curtain onto a stone terrace, lit by a single dramatic fire pit. A person was standing at the edge, looking out at the sea, their back to them. It was a woman. Julian slowed his walk. The woman was wearing a simple, elegant, white linen dress. Her dark hair was tied back. "Madam," Harrison said softly, "your guests have arrived." The woman turned. Julian Vance's world stopped. The air left his lungs. His smile, fixed for a high-powered greeting, froze and shattered. Chloe, a step behind him, let out a small, confused gasp. "Julian? Who is that?" The woman's hands were resting on the swell of her pregnancy. She smiled, a calm, cool smile that did not reach her eyes. "Julian, darling," Elena Vance said. "You made it. I was so worried about your flight to Zurich. You must be exhausted." Julian couldn't speak. He could only stare. This was impossible. This was a nightmare. "Elena?" he finally choked out. What are you? How did I get here?" she finished for him. "My G650 is much faster than your yacht, Julian, and I own the airfield. We don't have to file public flight plans." Chloe stepped forward, her face a mask of confusion and dawning horror. "Julian, what is this? Who is this? Is this your wife?" "Miss Decker, isn't it?" Elena's gaze shifted to Chloe, and it was as if she were examining an insect. "Chloe Decker, 24, junior analyst at Vance Capital, grew up in Ohio. You prefer Krug to Dom, you have 14,000 followers on Instagram, and you have a regrettable tattoo of a butterfly on your lower back. Am I missing anything?" Chloe went pale. "How do you know that?" "I know it," Elena said, turning her icy gaze back to her husband. "Because I know everything, Julian. Please, sit. We have so much to discuss." Julian's body moved, but his mind was still fractured. He stumbled into a chair. Chloe remained standing, vibrating with shock. "Sit down, Miss Decker," Mr. Harrison said, his voice no longer polite but firm. She sat. "A drink?" Elena offered. "I'll have my usual. Mr. Harrison, please bring our guests, whatever they're drinking. Oh, wait, that's right." She looked at Julian. "You can't pay for it." "What is this, Elena?" Julian snarled, finding his voice. "It's a trick. Some hormonal, pregnant game? How did you find me?" "Find you?" Elena laughed. It was a sound he'd never heard before, a cold, sharp sound. "Julian, I didn't find you. I invited you. The impossible reservation. The discreet holding company you wired the money to. That's my private family office. You paid me for the privilege of bringing your mistress to my home." Julian's brain short-circuited. "Your home?" "Serafina Key," Elena said, gesturing to the ocean around them, "is the flagship property of the Sandoval Hospitality Group. My group. The one I inherited from my father, the quiet academic you dismissed. The man you thought was just a retired professor was, in fact, the founder of one of the largest private hospitality empires in the world. An empire I have been running since his death. An empire I have been growing." She leaned forward. "You thought I was organizing charity luncheons? I was chairing board meetings. You thought I was balancing a checkbook? I was managing a global portfolio. You thought my little trust fund was just pocket money? Julian, my little trust fund is Vance Capital Partners." The blood drained from his face. "What? What did you say?" "I'd say this is where the main course arrives," Elena said, as Mr. Harrison placed a single, leather-bound folder in front of her. "This is going to be painful." "You're lying," Julian whispered. But the denial was weak. The blood was pounding in his ears. The declined Centurion card. The network outage. It was all clicking into place with a horrifying, sickening precision. "Am I?" Elena opened the folder. Let's review. 18 months ago, you made a catastrophic, leveraged bet on Argentine derivatives. You lost, let me see, $2.3 billion in a single quarter. Vance Capital was insolvent. You were days from a margin call that would have exposed you, bankrupted you, and likely sent you to prison for fraud. Julian was shaking his head, a mute, desperate gesture. But then, Elena continued, a miracle. An anonymous European investor swept in, acquiring a 49% non-voting stake in your firm, providing the exact liquidity you needed to cover the loss. You never questioned it. Your ego was so large, you just assumed the universe provides for men like you. She slid a document across the table. A signature page. That anonymous investor was me, Julian. I've been propping up your entire company. That salary you draw, it's my money. The penthouse, mortgaged to my holding company. The Gulf Stream, the yacht, all leveraged against assets that I, not you, control. You haven't had any money for almost 2 years. You've just been playing with my checkbook. Julian looked at Chloe. She was staring at Eleanor, her mouth open, her face a pale, terrified green. But why? Julian finally managed. Why do this? At first, I did it to protect the family name, to protect our child from the humiliation of your failure. I hoped, you would learn from it, that you would correct your course. Eleanor's voice was steady. But you didn't. You just became more arrogant. And then 6 months ago, you became sloppy. She slid a second set of papers across the table. These were not financial reports. They were photographs. Julian, kissing Chloe in the elevator of her apartment building. Julian, handing her a key. Julian at a jewelry store, buying a diamond bracelet he'd told Elena was a corporate gift for a client. You spied on me? I conducted due diligence on my failing assets, Julian. You were the biggest one. And when I discovered your infidelity, well, the plan changed. Chloe finally found her voice. It was high and shaking. He lied to me. He told me you were nothing. He said you were just a wife. I am his wife, Miss Decker, Elena said. And as his wife, I am entitled to certain things. Which brings us to the document you had me sign, Julian. She pulled out a final paper. The prenuptial agreement. You were so proud of this, Elena said. You had your sharks at Sullivan and Cromwell draft it. What's mine is mine. What's hers is hers. You thought you were protecting your future billions from my faded old money. You didn't even read the amendments my lawyers made. You just saw the main clause and signed. My lawyers vetted it. Your lawyers vetted the version you showed them. Not the final one you signed on our wedding day. You were too busy accepting congratulations. But my change was very small. I just added one clause. A mutual one, of course. A simple morality clause. She tapped the page. Section 8, subsection A. In the event of documented marital infidelity on the part of either party, all assets, shared or individual, managed jointly or separately, shall be immediately forfeit to the non-offending party. You insisted on it, actually. You were so terrified I might step out and try to take your empire. But it turns out, Julian, you were the one who broke it. Julian stared at the text. It was there, in black and white. As of 8:04 p.m. This evening, Eleanor announced, I invoked that clause. My legal team, in conjunction with the board of, my company, has voted to remove you as CEO of Vance Capital Partners, effective immediately. All your corporate accounts are frozen. Your personal accounts, which are funded by those corporate accounts, are also frozen. The Centurion card was declined not because of a network error, Julian. It was declined because you have a zero balance. You have, quite literally, nothing. The silence on the terrace was absolute, broken only by the waves. Julian looked like he had been struck by lightning. He was a shell. Chloe was the first to react. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly. She looked at Julian with pure, unadulterated hatred. You idiot! You ruined me! You brought me into this! You have nothing?" "Miss Decker," Julian whispered. "Chloe, wait!" "Don't touch me!" she shrieked. She turned to Eleanor, her eyes wide with panic, attempting a new strategy. "Mrs. Vance." "Eleanor, you have to believe me. I had no idea. He tricked me. He told me you were separated. He said you were unwell. He used me. You're a woman, you must understand. It's his fault." Elena watched the performance without a flicker of emotion. She sipped her water. "Mr. Harrison," Elena said, her voice bored. Harrison stepped forward. Two large, formidable-looking men in quiet, professional-looking security attire stepped out of the shadows. "Miss Decker," Harrison said, "your vacation at Serafina Key is, unfortunately, over. We have already packed your belongings from the villa." "What? No, you can't." Chloe backed away. "Julian, do something." Julian didn't move. He was paralyzed. "There is a ferry to the mainland in Belize that leaves in 1 hour," Harrison continued. "A car will be waiting to take you to the public terminal." "A ferry?" Chloe's voice cracked. "A public ferry. I came on a yacht." "The Orion has been seized, miss," Harrison said flatly. "It is now the property of Sandoval Hospitality, pending liquidation. These gentlemen will escort you to the dock. Please do not make a scene. Our other guests value their privacy." "Other guests?" I thought we were the only ones." "We are at 10% capacity," Elena said, finally looking at her. "You just weren't invited to the same parties, Miss Decker. Goodbye." The security men took Chloe's arms. She didn't fight. The fire just went out of her. She looked, suddenly, exactly like what she was. A 24-year-old who had made a very, very bad bet. She allowed them to lead her away, her sobs lost in the sound of the ocean. The terrace was silent again. The fire pit crackled. Julian was still staring at the prenup, his knuckles white. "Elena," he said, his voice a low, strangled rasp. "You can't. The baby. Our baby. You wouldn't do this to the father of your child." Elena's face, which had been marble, finally hardened into something new. Something he had never seen. Fury. "The baby," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You dare to speak his name. You, who were on a yacht with another woman while I was at a hospital." "What? What hospital?" 2 days ago, the day you left for Zurich. I had a scare. Some bleeding. Dr. Matthews was worried. I spent 8 hours in an examination room, alone, terrified I was losing our son. And where were you? You were drinking champagne with her. Your phone was off. You were inaccessible. I didn't know," he whispered. "You didn't know because you didn't care to know." She slammed her hand on the table. The water glasses jumped. "You didn't care about me. You didn't care about this baby. You only cared about yourself." "This baby," she said, placing both hands on her stomach, "is a Sandoval. He will not be raised by a liar, a fraud, and a failure." "I am not a failure," Julian roared, finally finding his feet. He stood, knocking his chair over. "I built that firm. Me! My name is on the door." "Your name is on a door I paid for," Elena shot back, standing as well. She was magnificent in her anger. "You built nothing. You were a gambler who lost. I was the house, and the house, Julian, always wins. He tried a new tactic, pleading. He moved around the table, his hands outstretched. "Elena, my love, please, it was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless diversion. She meant nothing to me. You know that. It's you I love, you and the baby. We can fix this." He reached to touch her arm. "Don't," she commanded, and he froze. "Don't you ever touch me again." "I'll do anything," he begged, his voice breaking. He was crying, real tears of terror. I'll go to therapy. I'll resign. You can run the company. Just don't do this. Don't leave me with nothing. You're my wife. You're supposed to stand by me. I stood by you when you were committing fraud, Julian. I stood by you when you were lying to me every day. I stood by you when I was alone in that doctor's office. I am done standing. Now I am moving." "This is illegal," he tried. One last, desperate bluff. You can't seize my assets without a court. I'll fight this. I'll take you to every court in New York." "You will?" Elena smiled. "With what money? You have no lawyer. You have no funds. You are, as of this moment, a man with a single suit and a very expensive, non-functional watch. And if you do find a lawyer to take your case pro bono, I will countersue. I will release the reports from my forensics team, the ones detailing your wire fraud, the ones that will send you to a federal prison for the next 20 years. So you have a choice." She stepped closer to him, close enough that he could smell the faint, expensive scent of her perfume. "You can take the ferry with Miss Decker," she said, "or you can try to fight me. And I will not only take your money and your freedom, I will take your name. I will make sure our son never knows who his father was. Your choice." Julian stared at her. This was not the Elena he knew. This was not the quiet, demure woman who discussed literature. This was a stranger. This was a queen, and he was a peasant at her feet. He knew, in that moment, that he had lost. He had lost everything. He deflated. The fight, the anger, the arrogance. It all evaporated, leaving behind a hollow, terrified man. What do I do?" he whispered. "You leave." Mr. Harrison stepped forward. He was holding a small, clear plastic bag. Inside was a simple ferry ticket and a few $100s in cash. "Mr. Harrison will show you to the service dock," Elena said, turning her back on him. She walked back to the edge of the terrace, looking out at the sea. "Elena, please." "Mr. Vance," Harrison said, his voice polite once more. "This way, please." Julian looked at his wife's back. She didn't turn. She didn't flinch. It was as if he had already ceased to exist. Defeated, humiliated, and utterly broken, Julian Vance followed Mr. Harrison out of the restaurant, leaving his wife alone on the terrace of the island she owned. A month passed. The Caribbean sun was just as bright, the water just as turquoise. Serafina Key was preparing for its grand opening. Elena Vance, no, she was Elena Sandoval now, having already filed the paperwork, sat on the terrace of her personal villa, not the Royal Triton. That one was being spiritually cleansed, as Mr. Harrison had put it. She was on a conference call, but this time it wasn't about collapsing firms. "And the board of the Sandoval Foundation has approved the new initiative," a voice said from her laptop. "The Vance Capital Liquidation Fund will be redirected to establish 3 new shelters for women and children in the New York area. The penthouse has been sold, and the funds are already in escrow." "Excellent," Elena said, rubbing her now very prominent belly. "And the Orion?" "The yacht was sold at auction in Monaco last week," Mr. Harrison reported, sitting opposite her with his own tablet. The proceeds will fully fund the Foundation's operations for the next decade. Good. See that it's done. She closed the laptop. The quiet of the island settled around her. It was peaceful. A package arrived for you, Madame Sandoval, Mr. Harrison said, placing a small, battered cardboard box on the table. It has no return address, but the postmark is from Belize. Elena looked at it. She knew who it was from. Open it, please. Harrison sliced the tape with a letter opener. Inside, resting on crumpled newspaper, was a Patek Philippe watch, Julian's watch. There was also a single piece of paper, a greasy sheet torn from a notepad. In messy, desperate handwriting, it said, "I need food. Please. I'll do anything." J. Elena stared at the watch, the symbol of his power, the thing he'd flashed at her 1,000 times. Now it was just a piece of metal, traded for a ferry ticket and a month of desperation. "What are your instructions, madam?" Harrison asked. Elena pushed the box away. "Return to sender," she said. "We don't accept unsolicited donations." "Very good, madam." He took the box and disappeared. Elena stood and walked to the edge of her pool. She looked out at the horizon, a perfect, unbroken line of blue. She thought of Julian, and for the first time, she felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just quiet. She had spent years hiding her strength, believing it was her duty as a wife to be a partner, to be supportive. To be less so, he could be more. She had let him build a gilded cage for her, not realizing she had always held the key. His betrayal had been a terrible gift. It had shattered the cage and forced her to remember who she was. She was not Elena Vance, the quiet wife. She was Elena Sandoval, the daughter of a visionary, the head of an empire, and the mother of a son. The baby kicked, a strong, sudden movement. Elena smiled, placing a hand on her stomach. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered to the sea breeze. "It's just us now, and we own the entire view." The package landed on the warped wooden table of his rented room with a dull, final thud. Julian tore it open, his hand shaking from a combination of humidity, hunger, and a desperate, flickering hope. Maybe she had relented. Maybe it was a plane ticket. Maybe it was a letter. It was the Patek Philippe. He stared at it. She hadn't even kept it. She hadn't sold it. She had returned it. The gesture was more brutal than any verbal insult. It was a statement of complete and utter irrelevance. The watch, his $150,000 badge of honor, was just an object she didn't want in her house. Julian sank onto the lumpy cot, the springs groaning in the suffocating Belize city heat. It had been 6 weeks. 6 weeks since he'd been escorted off Serafina Key with $500 and a ferry ticket. 6 weeks of a living nightmare. His suit, the last remnant of his old life, was a wrinkled, sweat-stained ruin. The $500 was long gone, spent on this squalid room and whatever food he could buy from street stalls. He was no longer Julian Vance, titan of finance. He was just a ghost, haunted by a life that no longer existed. He needed money. He needed a way out. The watch was his only option. He found a pawn shop on a dusty back street, the sign half broken. The proprietor, a man with a lazy eye and a shirt unbuttoned to his navel, chewed on a toothpick as Julian entered. "I need to sell this," Julian said, his voice hoarse. He tried to inject his old authority into it, but it came out sounding like a plea. He laid the watch on the glass counter. The man, Silas, picked it up. He hefted it. He peered at the face, then at the movement through a jeweler's loop. He was silent for a long, agonizing minute. "It's a Patek Philippe," Julian said, his voice cracking. It's worth over $100,000. I'll take 50,000, cash." Silas set the watch down and laughed, a dry, rattling sound. 50,000. Sure, Hefe. And I'm the King of England. It's real. Look at the serial numbers. Oh, I know it's real, Silas said, leaning in. His breath smelled of stale rum. It's a very beautiful watch. A watch like that belongs to a very rich man. A man with a yacht, maybe. A private jet. A man who does not look, he gestured at Julian's entire pathetic appearance, like you. I lost my wallet. My boat sank. Spare me the story. I see men like you every day. You stole it. From a tourist. From a house. Silas pushed the watch back toward him. Get out. I don't buy stolen goods this hot. Not unless the price is right. I didn't steal it, Julian screamed, slamming his fist on the counter. It's mine. Silas's smile vanished. He reached under the counter and produced a heavy, rusted machete, laying it flat between them. The price, he said quietly, is $500 American. You take it, or you take your watch and you leave. And if you yell at me again, I will take the watch and your hand. Julian stared at the blade, then at the watch, his symbol of power, his last connection to the man he was. He thought of the hunger clawing at his stomach, the rent he couldn't pay. He was defeated. 500, he whispered. Silas grinned, sweeping the Patek into a drawer. He counted out a small, dirty stack of bills. Julian snatched them and fled the shop, the man's laughter following him into the street. With the cash, he bought a cheap meal and went to an internet cafe. He needed to know. He needed to see what had happened to his world. He paid for an hour and typed in his own name. The screen flooded with results. Vance Capital dissolved. Wall Street. Titan Julian Vance disappears amid fraud allegations. The mysterious Elena Sandoval, the woman who took down an empire. He clicked, his blood running cold. The articles painted him as a villain, a reckless gambler who had defrauded investors. Then they painted Elena as a saint. The Sandoval Hospitality Group had, in a stunning act of philanthropy, absorbed all of Vance Capital's toxic assets and, instead of liquidating, had funneled them into a new foundation, the Sandoval Legacy Foundation, dedicated to funding women's shelters and providing legal aid to victims of financial fraud. His company, his name, his entire life's work, was now a charity. She hadn't just taken it. She had repurposed it. She had erased him and replaced him with an act of benevolence. He scrolled, finding a picture of her. It was from a week ago, at a press conference. She was standing in front of the New York Public Library, radiant, her pregnancy pronounced. She was smiling, holding a symbolic check. The headline read, Elena Sandoval pledges Vance assets to rebuild lives. He wasn't just broke. He wasn't just exiled. He had been rewritten. He was the dragon she had slain to build her new castle. He walked out of the internet cafe, stumbling into the bright, indifferent sun. The $500 in his pocket felt like lead. It wasn't enough to get home. It wasn't enough to restart. It was just enough to survive for another few weeks, to prolong the agony. He was a ghost in a foreign land, and the woman who had banished him was being celebrated as a hero. 2 months later, the first snow of the season was dusting the grounds of the Sandoval family estate in upstate New York. The Manhattan penthouse, with its cold glass and sterile views, had been sold. Its contents were auctioned, the proceeds added to the foundation. Elena Sandoval sat in a wing-back chair in a room filled with morning light. This was her father's library, a room of warm wood, old books, and quiet strength. The nursery down the hall was ready. It was painted a soft, gentle cream, with classic, handcrafted wooden furniture. It was a room built for a legacy, not for show. Mr. Harrison entered, holding a leather satchel. "Good morning, Madame Sandoval. I have the last of the papers." "Is it done?" she asked. "It is. The divorce was finalized in a closed hearing this morning. The New York court cited the morality clause and your husband's abandonment. You are, in the eyes of the law, fully and completely unbound." He placed a document in front of her. She signed Elena Sandoval on the final line. It was over. As she set the pen down, she drew a sharp, sudden breath. A powerful contraction seized her. She looked at Harrison, a small, calm smile touching her lips. "It seems," she said, "he's ready." The birth was nothing like the terror-filled hospital visit months before. It was calm, private, and powerful. She was surrounded by the best medical team her money could buy in a secure wing she had endowed. After 8 hours, her son was placed in her arms. He was perfect. He had her dark eyes and a full head of black hair. He looked at her, his tiny, unfocused gaze seeming to search her face. All the anger, the ice, the calculated revenge that had driven her for the past year melted away. It was replaced by a fierce, lioness-like protection she had never known. Mr. Harrison was permitted to enter the room. He held a file. "The birth certificate, madam." A nurse approached gently. "And the father's name, dear?" Elena looked at her son. She thought of Julian, a brief, cold flash of a man on a terrace, screaming about his name. She thought of his watch, an empty, meaningless trinket she had sent back into the void. He was not a father. He was a mistake. Then she thought of her own father, Carlos Sandoval, the man who had taught her that true strength was quiet, that intelligence was the sharpest weapon, and that respect was the only currency that mattered. She looked at the nurse, her voice clear and strong. "There is no father to be listed." She took the pen and turned to the document. On the line for "name of child," she wrote, in firm, elegant script, 2 words: Mateo Sandoval. She had taken her company. She had taken her freedom. And now she had secured her future. The Vance name was not just defeated, it was erased, replaced by a new legacy, one that would be built on truth, strength, and her name alone. She held her son close, looking out the window at the snow-covered grounds of her home. It was a new world, and it was all hers. And that's the story of how a man who thought he owned the world learned he was just a guest in his wife's. Julian's arrogance was his downfall, but Elena's quiet strength was her salvation. She proved that the person you underestimate is often the one holding all the cards. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in the noise you make, but in the silent, unshakable foundation you build. What did you think of Eleanor's ultimate revenge? Was it too harsh, or was it exactly what Julian deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story of drama, twists, and sweet justice, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this video with someone who loves a good story, and most importantly, clicking subscribe and turning on notifications so you never miss another upload. We have new stories coming every week. This is your storyteller, signing off.